Hello and welcome back to my channel. After a short summer break of not making many videos, today I'm back. And guess what? How do we start? We start with one of the most essential poses in yoga, Adho Mukha Svanasana or downward facing dog. And this is a pose which you will do in almost every yoga class that you're gonna visit. So let's start by explaining the pose from the ground up. But first of all, let's make sure we get the correct distance between the hands and the feet. So how do we do this? The best way to do it is to go into a plank pose. And then when you have your plank pose, so not too far, not too short, that your shoulders are going forward, but your shoulders should be just above your wrists. And from here, you can walk your feet a tiny little bit to the front and then place your heel where the front of your foot was. And this should be the basic distance in your downward facing dog. Okay, so I promised we're gonna start from the ground up. First thing, hands positioning. So it is very important that you keep your hands and your fingers widely spread. So I see many of my students, they kind of close the hands like they're holding something or they're lifting up the middle of the hand, so that it becomes like a cup, like a pyramid. And this is wrong. So you have to spread the hands very far from each other. So you spread all the fingers and then you place your wrists shoulder distance apart. So as much as your shoulders. The next thing, the fingers. What I do is I place the index finger, so my second finger, parallel to my arm bone, to the lower arm bone, meaning this finger points forward. And then I just spread my hand. Let's do it on the mat. So placing the index finger to point forward and then spreading your fingers away from each other. This is the hands position. And then the next thing, which is on the ground, is actually our feet. So we need to find our distance, which we already explained, from a plank pose, and then lift the bottom up. Now, the feet, the most common mistake which people do is they try to push the heels towards the ground without actually being ready to do it. So you see, when I push my heels, my legs straighten, but also what happens is my lower back rounds a lot. So this is the next thing to bear in mind here, is to micro bend the knees if you don't have very open hamstrings. My hamstrings are not open, so I need to bend my knees a lot to get to the right position. The next thing, what happens with the hips? So we are rotating, doing an anterior pelvic tilt, meaning we are trying to do the same as cat and cow. So in this cat pose, we are trying to lift our sit bones up towards the sky. And the same thing we do in our downward facing dog. We don't tuck the tailbone down because this rounds our back, lower back, but we try to push the seat bones up towards the sky. Basically, my belly comes down to my hips. The worst thing you can do is actually to tuck your tailbone and then round your lower back. So this is about the hips, anterior pelvic tilt, meaning we are rotating the pelvis forward. not backward. So forward rotation of the pelvis and sit bones showing up towards the sky. The highest point should be actually your tailbone, should be pointing up. So the next thing is the shoulders. One of the maybe most complicated things to explain in a downward facing dog are the shoulders. So what happens with the shoulders? We have this rotation of the arms up, and now what many people do wrongly here is trying to bring the elbows to show to the outer side so that the inner elbow, they show down, basically externally rotating your upper arm. And this also, you see my hands then rotate to the front. And this is not what we want. We would actually like to rotate the upper arm out so that the elbow, this part of the elbows, comes up to the sky basically, almost, or at least pointing towards each other. So your inner part of the elbow should be pointing toward each other or up to the sky and not out like this. And what happens then with the shoulder blades, another mistake that we can do is that we shrug the shoulders up to the ears or pull them too much down the back. So when we lift the arms, it should feel like a natural movement. We should not put the shoulders up or too much away. So shoulder blades are actually coming away from the spine. And let's try to do it. So we just come to our downward facing dog and we show firstly the don'ts. So don't try to pull your shoulders to the ears or take them too much away. Just maintain a neutral position and don't try to overextend your shoulders. So this is really something which happens very often. So overextending means that our chest collapses and our head is pointing towards the ground. We want a neutral position, not to the ears, not too much away, but we are basically pulling the ground away from us. And with this, and with the right rotation of the hands, it should be no problem to do a downward facing dog which does not make you tired or hurt. So these were the most common mistakes. So again, to summarize, position of the hands, spread your fingers and make sure your index fingers are parallel to your arm bone. And then spread the fingers. This would give you the correct position of the hands. Do not internally rotate the upper arm, but externally rotate so that the inside of your elbows is pointing more towards the sky. This is for the hands. And for the hips, do not try to pull your heels down to the ground. This will most likely round your lower back. Bend your knees. Make sure your lower back is straight. One straight line from your head to the tailbone. And don't let the head hang too much, looking towards your chest, but just look down. So your head is extension of your spine. And you can see you can always move one leg towards the ground, then the other one. But just maybe do it one by one in the beginning, because if you do both heels to the ground, then you are rounding the lower back. Most important thing, keep a straight line from your hands to your tailbone and breathe. So this was our downward facing dog. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you also enjoy doing your downward facing dogs. If you have some questions, please leave them in the comments below. Hope to see you soon again.